Yeah, so I remember watching this video like a few years ago. Like I think it might have even been like before YouTube existed. It was of this kid that was like getting shot by his friends while he was like standing on a log in the middle of a creek. And as far as I could tell, like they were doing like some sort of like Steve Irwin spoof where like he was like playing the part of Steve Irwin or whatever. But just like in the middle of the like spoof, like his friends just like started shooting at him with paintballs. Yeah, he was sort of chubby and like he had sort of like red hair. But the thing that I remember most about him was just like sort of the emotions in his voice, like when they started shooting at him. Like, it was kind of like this mix of like laughing along with his like, friends, but also sort of like this frustrated sadness. Like, I could just sort of hear this like frustration in his voice that, he was chubby and not like thin like his friends. Like, just sort of like this ever present, like low level discomfort, like, like an infection somewhere in your body that like doesn't present with any like dramatic symptoms. But, it can only like be detected during a blood test or something. Like, not enough discomfort to like completely debilitate you, but, just enough to make life miserable. Just, like chronic low level inflammation. Forever the fat kid, never the main character. Relegated to the role of like, comic relief side character. Like Yajirobe from Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, but just like the emotion in his voice, like to me, like it just kind of felt like this discord of like, like him like not accepting his role as Yajirobe, but like at the same time, like, reality is like clearly telling you like, hey buddy, you're a chubbo. Yeah, so I'm 33 years old and like I've never had a girlfriend or anything, and like, I live with my dad still. Like, I have a few ideas of how I kind of like ended up here. And I make videos and stuff about that on my channel. Yeah, but I think like at least one of the things that sort of like changed my trajectory in this direction was like the fact that I kind of was that kid, In fact, I think I'm kind of like projecting my life story onto him like unfairly. Cause I kind of see myself in that kid so much, like even down to the jeans shorts and like the pasty skin and the chubbiness. Like God, that was so me when I was younger. And I really, really hated my body when I was a teenager. Like I just felt like so uncomfortable all the time, like no matter what I did. Like at family gatherings or whatever, like, everybody else in my family is like thin and like looks good. Like, they had good bodies or whatever. But, I was just like this pasty blob. Like I could just remember the sensation of like sitting down in a chair at my aunt's house and like, I was wearing this shirt that was sort of like clinging to my chest in a way that was like revealing the shape of my body. And like I just felt like so uncomfortable sitting on the couch, like my hands were sweating and I was just like, I kept trying to like adjust my shirt so that, it wouldn't like show my gut. But, I just couldn't get it to like not cling to my chest that wouldn't like show my fatness to the world. And so I was just like uncomfortable all the time. Yeah, like I always hated going to the pool. Like I haven't been to the pool since I was like 12 because, I just never took my shirt off. In fact, I still don't ever take my shirt off, actually. Though my body is, like, much improved since then. More on that later, actually. Yeah, but I just remember the experience of, like, looking at the other kids at the pool and just thinking to myself, like, God, like, what a fairy tale it must be to, like, live with, like, a visually aesthetic body. Like, I feel like you people were all invited to some party, and I wasn't because, I look ridiculous. Like, how in the world do you have a nice body? Like, how does that happen? Like, what is it exactly that I'm doing wrong here? Because, at that age, everybody's basically eating the same, like, junk food diet. It was the same thing with my skin, actually, too. Like, I always had these, like, blemishes on my face, and, like, my complexion was always, like, a mess. And, like, I would look at people with nice skin and think, like, how is that even possible? And yeah, I don't think I acted like a chubby kid either. Like, I think I sort of acted like I was thin, and again, I think it sort of created like this discord, like, like not accepting my role as Yajirobe, because I didn't want to be Yajirobe. Like, I wanted to have like a nice looking body that like, somebody might want to look at some point. Like, I always sort of felt like my chubbiness was sort of like holding me back from the full scope of what life had to offer, like, obviously girls weren't going to be into me looking like I did. And like, obviously I looked too ridiculous to ever sort of like have friends, even though fat people like obviously have friends too. Like, I think my issues probably were/are like, more than just my weight/appearance. Like, some fat people just seem like completely unhindered psychologically by like what they look like. And you know what? Hey, good for them. Like, if you found a way to be comfortable with it, like, more power to you. But, I just was not one of those people. Like, I was very bothered by what I looked like. And like, I just had this voice always screaming at me in the back of my head, like, something is wrong with your body. Yeah, I remember this one time, like me and my brother and my cousin were all at this hotel, and there was this indoor pool, and like we were about to go swimming, but I hadn't taken my shirt off in years in front of anybody, and like we were about to get in, and like I didn't want to like make a scene by like not taking my shirt off, and so I kind of just like forced myself to, like despite my instinct like screaming at me like not to do it, and I will just never forget like the utter embarrassment of that moment. Like I think it was especially bad since like my brother hadn't like seen me shirtless in like 5 years at that point, and so it was kind of like a big reveal, like a viral video or something. Just it was just a complete humiliation. Like I just felt like God, like what an embarrassment I am to my family. Like my brother and my cousin, like they were good specimens. Like they passed the inspection, got the green light. Not you, fat boy. People would tell me that it was like not a big deal and like nobody cared. And I really do appreciate that people were like kind enough to try to like sugarcoat the issue to like make me not feel so bad about it, especially since I was so young. But the truth is that I really feel like there was something wrong with my body. Like you can sort of pick up on that stuff like subconsciously, like when you look at a person. Like Malcolm Gladwell has this book called Blink where he says that like we sort of like make snap judgments about things subconsciously, and like I think I kind of knew that when I was 12, and like I think I always just knew that there was like something gross about me, and sort of like like relationships and girls and stuff like have always sort of like felt like way off to me. And maybe one of the reasons for why that's always felt like walking on glass to me is because like maybe I'm sort of like subconsciously like quarantining myself. Like the thought is like maybe it would be better for everybody if you just kind of like sat this one out, because maybe I'm diseased in some way that I'm not aware of. And like looking back on it, like I do kind of think that I had something like metabolically wrong with me, because I just I had a lot of fat around like my middle, but like not in other places, which is that's like a pretty strong indicator of like metabolic problems. Like I was like skinny fat when I was like 13 years old. I wasn't like a fat guy, who has like sort of like this even fat distribution. Like I was just kind of like weird looking, like Terry A. Davis. Like I kind of feel like I was a pioneer in the world of like childhood metabolic dysfunction. Like all the like childhood pre-diabetes we have now, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way. And I think there's something very fishy about how fat we're all getting. Well, I was doing that in the 90s before everybody else was doing it. I always felt like I ate too many carbs. Like I always had this like insatiable appetite for them. Yeah, I've always kind of thought that it was weird that like chimps are sort of like the laziest animals on the planet. Like all they do is sit around all day and like do nothing. Like they don't exercise, and yet like none of them are fat. Like they don't seem to have to be like constantly mindful of like what they're eating and like constantly exercising to maintain their bodies. And it's like like maybe this is telling us something. Like there's sort of like this tough guy mindset, like oh, you gotta work to earn it. But like why doesn't any other animal on the planet have to do that? Like why does every other animal not overeat? Like every other animal seems to have an appetite that is like perfectly self-regulated, and chimps they just like loaf around all day, and like they're jacked. Like they have great bodies, and like I don't think it's just like a lack of food that prevents them from eating, because like gorillas, like all they do is they just eat sticks and leaves all day, and just like there's no shortage of that to eat. Like they can just kind of like eat whenever they want, but they don't. Why not? These are questions we need to be asking. Like maybe we're doing something like fundamentally like bonkers wrong that's like destroying everybody's health. I mean, people were like unknowingly like irradiating themselves with radium watches back in the day. But so, like what's to say we're not doing something like equally as stupid today? Yeah, but I've actually lost a lot of weight over the years. Like, past the age of 19, like I've been pretty consistently at a normal BMI or whatever. But, I always had this like spare tire that I could like never get rid of. But, I think I might have like figured that out. So, like maybe I'll make a video about that at some point. Yeah, so it's been a while since I made a video. Like I was having these like really screwy like symptoms for about 4 months, but I think they're gone now, so I can like finally concentrate again. But yeah, like thanks for watching.